Hello, everyone. I'm Guy Costantini from Skydance. This is Chris Busse. Uh,
Hello.
we're here to talk to you about The Walking Dead: Saints and Sinners and sort of like the journey from creation to market. It's been a wild ride, so hopefully you'll have a great time.
It
I'm the head
has.
of marketing, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. And Chris is the head of production, so he's going to be telling you about a whole bunch of stuff you can't get done. So we are Skydance Interactive, members of the Skydance family. You may have seen some of our stuff. We put out Archangel Hellfire, and Saints and Sinners on the game side. On the TV side, we've done stuff like Foundation that's coming up soon, Jack Ryan, Altered Carbon. On the film side, things like Mission Impossible, the upcoming Top Gun, and The Old Guard on Netflix. And we also have a nascent animation division that recently announced that they're working on a title. So we do a lot of things, but the people that you're talking to now are the ones that are really focused on the game side of things. We've been working on VR gaming, and before that, just sort of the edge of what technology would allow gaming for quite some time. So hopefully you'll find this interesting.
Yep.
I'm going to hand it off to Chris to talk about the game.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about Saints and Sinners, and this is the third VR game that we ended up making, and really learned lessons from each of them. Go ahead and give me the next slide. We began knowing that we wanted to make a VR title, and we knew that we had The Walking Dead, and so we wanted to live in that world. And one of the great things that VR does is really let you inhabit not just the world, but a character. And we wanted to put you in that world. In fact, one of our early, ideas about what the tagline of the game might be is "Live the Walking Dead." And so all of our choices were really centered around that, wanting the player to feel like that. What would they do if they were in this world, right? And so, really wanted to focus in on kind of giving player a huge amount of choice in what they do at any time. Anytime you're talking to anybody, you can, mess with them and interact with them and do various different things. So we wanted those choices to really be there. And we wanted that world to be, expansive and feel real. We wanted to kind of go beyond that kind of entry level, VR experience that, we had been exploring as well. As we got more used to kind of VR as a medium, we wanted to really push the limits and bring that full kind of game experience that everybody's looking for, with combat and exploration and, letting your weapons and stuff degrade. And that's, where we kind of came at it from and ended up discovering these pillars, right? Of the visceral brutality and the anxiety inducing. And really that anxiety inducing is the secret sauce that we're going to talk about here next. The tension engine. This is the engine that runs the whole thing. It creates this kind of vicious loop, right? So you have dwindling supplies and you have your weapons degrading and you're trying to kind of, move through the world. But as these things are, degrading, that forces you to go out and explore and find new supplies and upgrade your weapons and find new weapons. And of course, when you do that, that puts you into contact with other people and walkers. And now all of a sudden you're going to, end up in combat and maybe you'll get injured, which forces you to go and, find medicine and bandage yourself, which, leads you back to the crafting. And so it becomes this kind of tightening cycle that we put you in pressure at all times. And so the world is just a little bit too big to casually explore, and your time is a little bit too short, or, zombies come, just as you're kind of hoping for a little respite and stuff like that. And so we've got this just beautiful cycle where, if you're playing really well, things seem to be going fine. But when, you make those small mistakes, we're there to just kind of put you into a bit of stress and a bit of tension.
And, this is very much in line with The Walking Dead, right? You see a walker, they're shuffling around a little slowly. You think you got it, right? And then you turn a corner and all of a sudden the situation turned to shit and you don't know how to handle it.
Exactly.
So the tension engine is predicated on the concept of fragility, player fragility. Like you're constantly sort of trying to survive And you think, just when you think that you have it under control, things fall apart. You drop a gun in an alley in the middle of a confrontation, all of a sudden your firearm is gone. You only have a melee weapon. The melee weapon falls apart. So it's, again, it's this kind of ebb and flow between feeling control and the loss of control that powers this.
Yeah, it's definitely not intended to be a hero's journey.
So let's talk a little bit about what that the average day of a survivor in post-apocalyptic New Orleans, which is the setting for the game. So you wake up, you're going to be at a hub where you have your supplies, a little bit of safety or perceived safety, and you're going to have the ability to gear up, to prepare yourself for whatever quest you're on or whatever objective you have. Maybe you need some medicine because you're sick and your health has been deteriorating, or maybe you're actually going after one of the tasks that somebody in the world assigned to you. And so you get ready, you go out, you take your skiff. Since New Orleans is semi-flooded, you kind of make your way out into the city. And you find that the house that you're meant to go to is fortified. There's humans, which are the major enemies in the Walking Dead franchise. And they're there. They're just kind of, they don't want to let you in. So you have a couple of approaches that you can take. You may decide a full frontal assault is the way to go. It doesn't look like you're going to be doing that hot though, because you have, you know, a 6-shooter and a knife, and they have ARs. So you can look around. There's a crack under the foundation of the house. Maybe you can sneak in by going under the house. Maybe you can climb to get up from a higher level. As you make your way in the house, you search room to room trying to find the objective. And you get ambushed by some walkers because they cracked into the house. There was some fire, and all of a sudden, your time is dwindling. People are shooting everywhere. You have to make your way out. You lucked out this time around. You were able to get your objective. You kind of noticed it from the corner of your eye and just quickly grabbed it up. And so you hear the bells. The bells are sort of our alarm system that tells you that the tower, the dominant faction, is going to flood the area with walkers. And so you just got to book it out of there if you don't want to have to survive through a herd. And so that's sort of a day in the life, right? This is kind of a session, a gameplay session. We wanted to make it sort of digestible in a short chunk and simultaneously, you know, giving you that hit of anxiety that the game is really known for.
Absolutely. And those layers of choices go throughout. You know, Guy mentions, you know, you didn't necessarily have to crawl under the house. You could have climbed a pipe or done a frontal assault. But even a step back from that, you didn't even have to necessarily pick this mission. You've got a bunch of missions on your map that you could go to. And so we're really kind of leaning into that idea that, you know, these sandboxes allow for player expression on how they want to take things on. And even the world itself allows you to, you know, go in a bunch of different ways and whatever kind of suits the way that you like to play. So yeah, these gifts are indicating, you know, kind of the melee brutality, but really this is an extension of that whole VR-ness that we wanted to bring, the presence that we wanted to have there, right? You know, you're pulling your axe off of your back, you're pulling your backpack out, you're rifling through, putting things into, you know, sorting through your backpack, grabbing stuff out of your slots. And it's one of the real strengths of VR is bringing that just sense of presence the entire time. And we really wanted that to come into the combat itself as well. And you know, whether you're, you know, swinging an axe or, you know, one of our, you know, handmade signs that, you know, turned into a knife, or using your firearms, you know, we want to feel the reload of the gun, the aiming, the, you know, sinking the knife really into the walker's head and having to, you know, drive it all the way home to, you know, deal with them. But it, you know, it's all part of this kind of physicality and presence that we wanted to be there. And this is why it became kind of one of our central pillars, was just the there-ness that you felt as you played the game.
We knew it was really difficult in VR to sort of nail the concept of melee combat. And we also simultaneously knew that VR was one of those places where melee could feel the best you've ever felt it. And so the team put so much time into making every contact with the walker's various appendages feel realistic, because it just levels up that anxiety that we were talking about earlier.
And this, again, leaning into there are other, you know, key pillar is just that, and that whole tension engine is really looking for those opportunities for when and creating them for the players to make mistakes, right? You know, in the left one there, you're searching through the house and you're trying to get into a new room with your axe, chopping through some wood. And of course, right as you kind of are making that noise, you turn and of course a walker's coming because they're attracted by the sound, and suddenly you've got to deal with not getting into that room, but dealing with this walker. And then in the other one, you know, you've got this guy, he's obviously got himself into a spot of trouble with a whole herd coming after him, and he's bandaging himself and pulling out his gun feeling, all right, I've totally got this. But, you know, maybe he doesn't totally have this, right? You know, that's as Guy likes to point out, that's a 2-shot shotgun that he's got going on there. So, you know, he's feeling totally confident. Boom. You know, you see he gets the first shot off and then he's just about to get the second shot off. And then what? He's going to have to fumble and reload or grab another weapon out of his pack or out of his holster or something like that, or hope that he's got, you know, his katana ready. You know, these are all opportunities to really find that area for putting the player under real stress. And we really wanted you to feel that stress yourself, right? It's intentional.
Yeah, you will learn a lot about yourself trying to survive in this game. You'll learn about your preferences in weapons. You'll learn that a two-handed weapon isn't always as cool as it looks. So it's something that we feel pretty happy about.
And yeah, as Guy alluded to, this is a huge part of the Walking Dead IP, the human angle of it. You know, the great quote I love that maybe Kirkman himself who said it, you know, the walkers are the weather. You deal with them as they come. But the real issue, what you're really dealing with is people, both the people that you meet and interact with, but also yourself, how you interact and deal with it. We wanted to really kind of explore what you would do when there were no rules. How would you react? What would you do when the consequences, even within the game themselves, are just how you feel about it, right? You know, we do some, you know, consequence building, but it's mostly about exploring how you would deal with all of this kind of stress and possibilities and wanting to kind of let people live that experience. And the inventory and exploration, this is, you know, more of that kind of VRness, is really wanted to lean into that, you know, physicality of it there, you know, from the wrapping the bandages around yourself to, you know, the climbing and stuff like that, you know, and even the map exploration, you know, physically picking up the map and stuff like that. We wanted that presence to be there, but there were also, again, opportunities for you to, you know, not play perfectly and, you know, allow that tension engine to come in. You know, you make a misstep while you're climbing and you might fall into the pack of zombies that are down there, or, you know, you grab the wrong bandage or you run out of bandages. You forget that you didn't have a bandage in your pack. And suddenly now when you really net health, it's not there for you. These are all just more aspects that lean into those kind of key pillars that we were driving towards.
I think the sentence I used to always use is, now it's a problem, you know, because it's the problem that you haven't anticipated that sneaks up on you, and all of a sudden you have to improvise. And that's sort of what makes this part of it, like, I credit the game team enormously, because even every small interaction in the game, they took a lot of care in making sure that it could be manipulated. There's this part in the game, without spoiling it, that you have to manipulate. And the fact that you have to assemble it and manipulate it in order to progress the game just makes it for such a more compelling experience, because all of a sudden you're not just clicking a button, you're actually having to work the object within the environment.
Yep. And, you know, this is kind of the postmortem that's always, you know, a part of looking at back on in a retrospective. I call it the two big VR ones. There are obviously ones I'll talk about beyond that, but, you know, VR is a new medium, and the instincts and experience that you've gained as a game developer might not apply quite as much as you would like. And so a big win for us was bringing people in all of the time. Multiple times a week, we would have, you know, 1 to 4 people in the office playing through, you know, whatever our latest section is, or a section that we had reworked. And we would learn, you know, sit there and watch the video or watch them live and just understand, like, oh, that didn't play out exactly as we wanted it to, or, oh, that was, you know, either more or less than intense than we wanted it to. And so it was a real key part of what we wanted to do was we didn't have that kind of gut to rely on. And so we had to kind of go to, real world testing to find out exactly where we're at. And to that brings me to the second point, which is that iteration, it's going to be longer and more than what you may normally be used to. And you should really make sure that you've allotted additional time for that. It's important to really get to those highest highs. Other traditional ones that we always have, which are exacerbated again by the fact that this is kind of a new medium, is, making sure that your team is the right size for the portion that you're in, and you don't want to be too large in pre-pro nor too small as you're kind of, entering into production, and really keeping a close track on where you are in your production cycle so that you're making sure that your team is the right size for the thing. So you don't have overruns or that you're, running late and stuff like that. Those are all, key things that we had to kind of tackle, and, had various successes on each of them, plus and minus for that.
And the team that worked on The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners has shipped a lot of titles over the years. And so when Chris says take more time than usual in iterating around the schedule, he really means it, because the team has worked on a lot of sort of 2D games, and a lot of lessons have been learned in the decades that 2D games have been around. In VR, you'll run into some stuff that you really need to kind of like build yourself from scratch. And so it's important to account for that.
Yep.
So we're going to get into what I like to call our brief timeline of screenshots, which shows you sort of like where we were in February 2019. This is a year out from launch. As you can tell, the models are not completely built. Textures are temp. There aren't any textures in some of this. And so this is sort of like the beginning of the game working, the systems being kind of proven out and getting ready to be fully built out. And you'll see that already we have some of the mechanics there, but the walkers don't even have teeth. So you know that the game is not quite there yet.
Yeah, this is like a month into production here, right? We've got some of the buildings built out from our pre-pro. We've started to kind of build the bus. We've got, really early examples of what the walkers are going to look like. But you'll see here on the next slide, just a few months later, the hub, and bus area is looking very much like it's going to be when it ships. We're already kind of, really cruising along, whereas, the other areas are less built out, and even the walkers are, fairly similar looking, and even the ones in the lower right, those weren't even models that we ended up shipping, right? So we're still kind of iterating a little bit on kind of the walker stuff as we're rolling in production here.
Yeah, you got the player has the measles. You got a whole bunch of like naked old men coming at you. Pretty unsettling. I credit our QA staff with a lot for putting up with this.
And then, yeah, here we are, a few months later, and just a few months before we end up shipping. And you can see that a lot of stuff has really come online. The hub and the crafting is there. The journal and the UI are really starting to approach final. The lighting and effects, the details on all kind of the weapons and stuff are really coming together. This is, we're nearing the end of production at this point and starting to go into pre-pro for the final push. And then these are our release, screenshots. You can see that, the blood doesn't look like measles. It looks, final and excellent. The details on all of the weapons is there. The walkers look amazing and grotesque, signage and all kind of lighting and details and atmospheres is in the world. So it's, it's feeling really good. And this is where Guy gets to talk.
That's right. So as that was sort of the production timeline. When it came to marketing this game, there's a lot of challenges because the market was just not quite there yet. So there's a lot to figure out. How do you find VR players? Where do you approach them? I think that we spent a lot of time sort of doing preliminary research in the various ways in which we could reach players. Because again, being in a VR ecosystem, your budgets are restricted. You got to be a little smarter with all your spend buckets. So a lot of what we ended up doing is sort of approaching it from the get-go to come out with one core tagline that we could all rally around. And as Chris was talking about, the idea that this was the first Walking Dead game where you weren't playing a character, but you were playing as yourself, was really appealing. So we came out with Who Are You, which is sort of like our call to action to say, come find out.
I think you guys really nailed it with that one, by the way. I just loved it when we fell upon that one.
We felt we had the opportunity finally to say, you know what, step through the screen and take matters into your own hands. And so that's sort of what we did.
Oh, I know why you've come here. I know what you're looking for. But what I still have to ask, tourist, is who are you? Now that the dead live forever, that every scrap counts, that everybody's just in it for themselves, do you hide in dark places? Do you kill from afar, or do you prefer it up close? Personal. It's a big world out there, and there's no one left to tell us what to do. So tell me, tourist. Who are you?
If I didn't do it, someone else would have. There was no preventing her exile.
Do it already! Finish the fucker!
Please. Not here. Not like this.
In him now!
That thing still gives me chills, man. I love that thing.
I still get goosebumps. JB is something else. That was our gameplay announced trailer, where we really sort of finally opened up about like what the game was going to look like, how it was going, what it was going to play like. An important step, something that thankfully everybody seemed to like, and it was really sort of meant a lot to the team to finally see it all come together, because you sort of get, when you're really close to the product, the changes are incremental, but when you finally see a video that sort of like brings it all together and presents the parts of the game that are objectively the ones that are most interesting, it really kind of motivated the team for the final sprint. And as you may have seen, if you have looked us up on YouTube, we were watched way more than we were played. Like, way more people enjoyed watching our content than people had VR headsets even. And the thing that we think made this possible is really that sort of feeling of freedom that the game affords you. If you look at Josh Dubb's top video, it's the top video of our game. It's not even about our game. It's just some crazy, the ravings of a lunatic is the way I would summarize it. I think you'd probably take that as a compliment. But it's a fantastic example of how the freedom of expression granted to you by the sandbox can be so powerful in getting the word out. It helped us a ton. It helped us keep the momentum going throughout the length of the marketing campaign. And it was really important because one thing that we understood from the very beginning is go after the entire audience that we wanted to tackle. Is going to take time. It's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. And we started from the sort of Walking Dead fandom, but we realized that a lot of Walking Dead fans didn't have VR headsets. And even if they were survival horror players, only a subset of those were VR players. So we sort of looked at the VR market as sort of like our total addressable market. We thought that if you could stomach the violence, then and you had a VR headset, you were going to play this game. And so we sort of went about it that way. But again, within that core, we sought out people that loved that sort of a deeper experience of gameplay in VR, and that sort of had their VR legs already. So to give you an idea, this is what our sales timeline looks like. We started in January. We're now in February. If you notice, this is sort of like it sort of shows a trajectory of growth. And the reason that it ended up working this way is because we had to stagger launches for our platforms. And what we did, we turned that, we ideally wanted to sim ship in January. However, game development being a creative endeavor, we got to a point where we just wanted to go to each platform in the best way possible. And so we took our time, and timing ended up favoring us. And it also made sure that throughout the year we had positive reminders that this game was out there. One thing that I credit the team enormously with is that they really took their time creating a game experience on PSVR and on Quest that was very specifically customized to the platform. And I think players have told us that they really enjoyed that. They definitely have shown it to us through sales. Where you look at this timeline, you're like, all right, this looks great. But this is the way we look at this timeline. It's like half or a third of our eventual timeline. And the reason for that is because VR is very different in sort of like your AAA, even your indie space. You have a lot more time. Some of the advantages of marketing a VR game is that there's just not as much competition. Some of the disadvantages is that there's fewer people in the market. So you have to kind of make the right decisions when it comes to spend, when it comes to the message that you're going to put out there, the windows that you have to get that message out there. There's quite a few lessons that we learned that I want to share with you. One of the things that is, obviously, this is true of any business, but like adapt to your circumstance, I guess, is the first lesson. Turn sort of the challenge into an advantage. It required extra investment to do so, but we approached it from a standpoint of we can have 3 launches in a year, and if we do it the right way, we can get a benefit from this sort of staggered release.
And that was really to what Guy was saying earlier. We recognized that the VR market was a smaller market, and so we really wanted to make sure we were capturing as much of that small market as we could. And so we wanted to lean into that PSVR and the Quest ports because we wanted to make sure that, and even Pimax, right? When we first launched and realized that we weren't supporting that, it was important that we, whatever corner of the VR market a player might approach from, we wanted to make sure that, we were giving them the best experience possible on that.
Yeah, you'll always get the person that's playing on Shadow PC through a virtual desktop and also bought like an Index and or is using a Vive with the Knuckles, and that has to work, right? And so there's a bunch of combinations. We really paid a lot of attention. The game team reacted very rapidly post each one of those launches with any issues that were creeping up. And given the really technical nature of the game, they had to respond very rapidly. So a lot of time was allocated for doing so. We over-indexed on communication across our social channels, but funneled it all into Discord because it was just an easier place to have a more casual conversation with our hyper-engaged fans. And then on top of that, we partner very closely with platforms. One of the advantages of VR is that the platforms are much friendlier with one another because they're not in this dire competition that the more established market is in. They're all just trying to make cool experiences happen in VR. So the guys at Sony were great. The guys at Oculus were great. Valve was awesome. They helped us really get the message out once the game was proven. And that's a lot of what, once it's all these gates that you have to work through as a marketer. And we were fortunate enough to be able to kind of power through each one of them. And yeah, last but not least, a lot of people bought Quest 2. So, keep that in mind. So in other words, we collected some heads. It was pretty good. We put them up in our bus and have been looking at them ever since. And I think Chris has some final VR lessons for us before we go.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you listen to Zuckerberg 5 or 6 years ago when he, acquired Oculus, that kind of got everybody excited, like, oh my God, VR is here. But at the time he said, look, this is going to be 5 to 10 years out. And here we are about 5 years later and realizing, hey, Mark, he's a pretty smart guy. The good news is the market is growing. Both, the hardware is getting better. There are more players out there. But at the same time, we as game developers are starting to kind of understand what the verbs are more and more. And so there's actually a really big opportunity there to make a non-small size investment and get a good return on it. So obviously you've got to be careful and make sure that you're managing things well, and that you're offering something that excites players and brings them in with newness or uniqueness. But it's there, the opportunity is there, and I would totally encourage people to go and explore VR. I think that the biggest problem we have is getting people in headset. We're huge fans of VR, and The Walking Dead and VR, we're not done with it. We're going to continue to explore a future here. It's too exciting not to.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that you can do in this space that allow you for that experimentation. It's definitely when you go down that rabbit hole, I'd say figure out what the things that you made that are great are, and then sort of stick to a couple of them for the messaging around your title. But definitely you can experiment a lot more. And to be fair, there's people experimenting on games on all platforms, but I think that you'll find this platform really interesting if you take a dive.
So yeah, that's The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners. We wanted to take a quick opportunity to kind of walk you through some of the development and marketing aspects of the title. Thank you for coming.
All right, guys. Take care.
See you.